this is just a quick intro to give you guys a heads up that this following episode is going to involve subjects or topics that some people might find a bit disturbing, or should we say triggering. So if you are someone who finds the subjects of mental health, self-harm, eating disorders, or things like that troublesome to listen to and triggering, this may not be the podcast for you. And if you are someone who is suffering with those types of things, please seek help. There is always help out there for those who are seeking it, and I wish you all the best in creating a better life for yourself. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Rebuilt series. This is episode 5 in our series of episodes, basically looking at case studies of individuals that we work with, in the hope that, looking at things that have worked for our clients also help you on your journey to whatever it is you're trying to achieve. The case study today is myself, which is kind of my idea of hell, sitting here on my own and talking about myself for an hour. So I've enlisted 2 very glamorous assistants in the shape of Naomi and Brad. You may also hear from our assistant coaches, Macy and Merlin, at some point, who are currently nestled away with a hot water bowl. So you may hear them have something to say at some point. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to them and let the roast begin, I suppose.
Cool. So I'm actually going to go ahead and introduce Tom for anyone who is listening to us for the first time and wants a little bit of a background. So Tom is an author, an educator, and a coach. As an author, he's published 1 book. He's got 2 on the way that are about to be published soon, and has some contracts lined up for even more in the future. So keep an eye out for those. As an educator, he has done seminars and training events all over Europe and North America. He's presented at some of the largest fitness events, including CanFit Pro and the Swiss Symposium several times, where he has also received the Swiss Lifetime Achievement Award for his contribution to the fitness industry. So that's pretty awesome. He has also worked with some very large organizations, such as universities and sports teams, such as Ohio State, the University of Cincinnati Strength and Conditioning Program. As a coach, Tom has coached lots of high-level athletes from all different backgrounds, lots of different sports, and he also runs a very successful online coaching company along with myself. It's called trainkaizen.com. Go check it out. And he is also head coach here at elitefts and at Tib Army. So he's a very busy man. Some little tidbits of information about Tom just to go on top of that.
Oh, God.
He is influenced heavily by Shaolin, especially their kung fu and the culture. He is originally from Wales in the UK. We moved out here just over 2 years ago to permanently live and work at elitefts full time. Yeah, I guess that kind of sums it up. He is a bit of a mad scientist, but also uses himself as the experiment.
I am the guinea pig.
Yes. So we're going to kind of go into some quick fire questions, just get warmed up. Thank you to everyone that sent questions in. It was really helpful. We've got a little bit of a framework, but we're just going to kind of get started with some quick fire ones. So I'm going to hand over to Brad.
So to get things moving, you have been through many iterations of Tom, and we'll dig into that as we go here. But just from the beginning, how has training changed for you from dive instructor, strength competitor, to the things that you're doing now? And as important to that, what have you stopped doing? Okay,
that's an interesting one. I love the quote from the Joker in The Dark Knight. I'm probably going to paraphrase it horribly here, where it's basically, he says, I'm just a dog chasing cars, and I wouldn't actually know what to do if I caught one, type thing. It does kind of feel like that, in that, this is the reason I was a terrible competitor, was because I saw it as more of an experiment and a thought process to see what happened, as opposed to achieving an end goal. But it took me a long time to figure out that was actually what it was. Because I would prep for a competition, and 3 or 4 weeks out, whether the prep has worked or not. Then it's kind of up to how you turn up on the day. So 3 or 4 weeks out, whatever, every single time, I would completely lose motivation, either because the experiment worked or didn't. And then I would be planning my next training program before I've even done the meet. The meet became irrelevant at that point. So I think that's one of the many reasons I probably wasn't a great competitor. but throughout that entire process, whether it was for scuba diving or even before that, I was a runner, like reluctantly, just because I was good at it. It was always just an experiment to see, like, does this work, essentially, and trying to create a toolbox, I guess. I mean, luckily I fell into a career where that toolbox kind of became useful. But all the way through, it's been curiosity driven, perhaps more so than end goal driven. And it's just kind of changed along with what my priorities are, I guess, in my life throughout that process. I think I was trying to find what would scratch the itch when I went into competing. Like, admittedly, when I was powerlifting, like, I just did that because I thought it was the right thing to do, and that, well, this is kind of where I want to apply my trade. I should probably do this because I'll need kudos. Like it adds strings to your bow or whatever, and it will help get me respected in what I do. That was the primary motivator for actually competing. Like, we did okay with it. I mean, she did a lot better than I did. When you can't even be the strongest person in your house, that kind of changes your motivation strategy a little bit. It can't be external at that point. But I think when, it sounds like a weird thing to say, but more so even when we came here, like even just within the last 2 years, I think having the confidence in improving or stepping up in my career in the way that we have gave me more confidence to step away from achieving other people's goals, and just focus on, like, just doing what I found rewarding. Like, I've always enjoyed or been drawn to more explosive style training, more athletic style training, that type of thing. Like, I loved the barbell lifting. Like, I even went into a quit bench and spent 2 years doing that, and that was a fun experiment. That taught me a lot of things. But I would always, if there was nothing on the horizon, I would always feel like drawn back to that type of stuff. And I think now having the confidence kind of in myself or who I am, and that I feel like I don't need to, like, lift a certain way to appeal to a certain clientele, has kind of freed me up now to just kind of do what I want. Because I think that was a big part of it too, is that, I enjoy my career so much. I almost kind of sacrificed my own training to try and help draw in the clientele that I wanted to work with, if that makes sense. So I just kind of feel like I've managed to separate those two things now, which is why probably now more than ever, I would say, I wouldn't say I'm enjoying it more than ever, because I don't do it for enjoyment anymore, which sounds like a weird thing to say, I know, but I feel like I have more freedom with it now than I ever have. And in terms of what have I stopped doing, I've stopped doing anything that I feel like people expect me to do and that I'm only doing for that reason. And, like, most, significantly now, I'm doing basically no barbell lifting. So, like, no deadlifts, no heavy squats. I'm doing tiptoe Zercher squats is the only squatting I'm doing. All my pressing work is push-ups and dips. And I suppose I'm doing high pulls, that explosive movement there, but oddly, when I've come here, I've basically stopped doing any powerlifting training, and that has nothing to do with being here as such. Except actually maybe in a positive sense, where being here has given me a strong enough confidence in who I am just to go, well, screw it. I'm going to do what I want to do and train the way that I want to train, which now is primarily driven by doing movements that teach me things. So, like, I'm on, like, this weird rabbit hole journey now, especially influenced by the Shaolin thing, where it's like, there are ways that the human body moves that I just had no idea about. Or there are ways of looking at it or controlling it or layers to it, however you want to put it, that, I thought I was reasonably well-versed at human movement. And then, like, you go there and you speak to these people and you're like, oh, I can actually look at this through a completely different lens. So when I came back from the Shaolin Temple, it was more about how can I set up my training so that I can go down that rabbit hole better. So things like the tiptoe squats are, like, a great, kind of example of that, because that's not going to get you stronger, although it kind of has for me, which is odd. But it's more about teaching me how they look at the squat and kind of enforcing those types of things, which I can then carry over to non-tiptoe squats and so on and so forth. So that right now has been the most rewarding project. And I think that project doesn't really have an end.
I feel like that pretty much sums up you being the experiment. Like, it's changed based on what you've wanted to learn along the way.
Yeah, very much so, I think.
Cool. Okay, so top book recommendations. They can be, we could do like 2 categories, strength ones.
Yeah, sure.
Or philosophy ones.
Man, that's a hard one. I mean, if you ask me right now, I would say, obviously, Shi Heng Yi's book, the books, he's now released 2. Thich Nhat Hanh, which I probably pronounced horribly, so I apologize, sir. Rinpoche Kopa Lobsang. These are all philosophy and Buddhism based, as you probably are guessing by now. If in doubt, anything by Dogen. Can't go far enough with that. But I think what I would say is encourage people to just, the way I look at education now is kind of different, I think, and maybe different to how we view education in like the Western world, perhaps, where I don't try to look for like, what thing do I want to learn about? I look for like a master to learn from. In that, I just want to learn everything, not everything, because that would be impossible, but I want to learn a lot about what that person has to say and their viewpoints on things. And then that kind of takes you in certain directions, right? As opposed to going in with like a preconceived notion of, I want to learn X, because quite often the thing you end up learning is not the thing that you went in to learn. Like I went to the Shaolin Temple and I came away with very different lessons than I thought I would. Not good or bad in any way, just different. And it's been the same with everyone else I've learned from. Like, I've been very lucky to work with like Dave and Christian, like two huge people in the strength training and fitness industry. But the biggest lessons I've learned from them probably haven't been related to strength training at all. If anything, the biggest realization for me from those individuals was, they were people that I, maybe idolize is too strong of a word, but you get what I'm saying. They're just people. And I mean that in a completely non-derogatory sense at all, but they have the same issues, the same like imposter syndrome, everything else that I deal with and anyone else who's like earlier in their career deals with. They're all doing it too. They have it too. Like the first seminar I did with Christian in the Czech Republic, I thought my head was going to explode from stress. And he was sat there just before it started and he was like, tell you what, man, like I would give anything for a comet to hit the planet right now so I don't have to present. And it's not because he doesn't want to educate people. It's because until he gets in the flow of it, that's how nervous he is. And I'm like, this dude's been doing this for like 2+ decades or whatever it is, like, especially in front of audiences. And he feels the exact same as I do. But I look up to him like he's like this perfect ideal of what I would strive to be. And it's like, okay, so that stuff doesn't go away. So maybe I shouldn't sweat that stuff so much. Like, you create strategies around it to deal with it and just keep going. And that's, people like Dave and Christian and stuff, the people who are successful, it's probably not that they didn't deal with those issues. It's just that they had them and they just kept going anyway. So that was probably the biggest lesson I learned from them. But it has nothing to do with like periodization or exercise selection or whatever. Sure, there was lessons like that along the way, but they aren't the most important ones. So that I would say, like, rather than looking at specific subjects, look at people that you want to learn from. Look at the people who are doing things that you want to do or what you're already doing in a better way or a different way, and just go there and expand your horizons and try to go in without expectations. That would honestly be my biggest piece of advice for education in general.
I think leading into that, I guess, podcast recommendations are probably the same answer, right? Like look for people that you want to learn from.
Yeah,
Do you
I
have
mean,
any recommendations
obviously there happens to be quite a good one that's local right here, right?
Yeah, outside of the table talk.
But again, in terms of podcasts, I don't have, beyond the table talk, obviously, I don't really have a loyalty to any individual podcast. I just look at the people that I want to listen to, and I follow the podcasts that they do. So like Shi Hengyi, when I first really wanted to start learning from him, I just Googled every single podcast he's done. I listened to it. It doesn't matter who's interviewing him. As far as with all due respect, like I don't care what the interviewer has to say that much. I want to learn from him. So I will just go wherever he is. And yes, every interviewer then is going to have a slightly different take on it, ask different questions and get him to say different things. But for me, that's the end goal personally. So, Diary of a CEO, we were listening to on the way here, I think is very good. Jordan Peterson's podcast, I think is very good. But again, I would encourage people to just find the person that they want to learn from and just go wherever they go. Because I'm not saying that's the only way, but I'm just saying that's the way I did it and it worked quite well. And maybe that's a way that more people need to just kind of try, perhaps.
Yeah.
So a thing I took from what you just said, kind of tying it all together, the lessons you learned from Christian and from Dave are about being a person and not about the things they have done. And then the book recommendations that you made, I will not try to mess up Thick's name, but he has a whole series of books that are how to sit, how to walk. So these are experts at their thing that have taken it all the way back to the most basic.
Sure.
And here's what we can all get out of this. So there's the things that everybody can get out of the basics. but some people can get a little more.
Mm-hmm.
And from that, let's talk about genetics. What part do genetics play for athletes,
Mm-hmm.
but how much different is it for different populations?
Mm-hmm.
Men versus women,
Mm-hmm.
tall versus short. And where is it just put in more effort?
It's always put in just more. You can't change the hand you're dealt, right? Although I'm going to go ahead and contradict that statement massively now, actually. I think genetics are going to set certain boundaries, but I think then, as we have begun to learn more and more about genetics and the field of epigenetics, where we change how our genes are expressed based on what we actually do during our life, even our thought processes can change our epigenetics. So basically how your DNA, you have your DNA structure, but then how it's folded is going to influence then what genes are expressed and easily transcribed and not. And we can change how that DNA is folded based on supplements, training, life choices, whether you smoke or not, all these types of things. So I think we are much more plastic organisms than we like to think. So of course there's going to be ceilings and constraints that genetics kind of define in a very hard manner. Like if you're the guy that steps in the gym day one and deadlifts 400 pounds, you're probably going to go far if that's the route you choose to go down, right? Whereas some people train for 15 years maybe and don't get a 400 pound deadlift despite doing everything right. So sure, there are hard constraints, but without sounding too callous, does it matter? Again, one of the biggest lessons that I've learned from like Dave, and this was funny when I interviewed him for the book, the most recent Racking the Bar, I think it was called. So much of it just came back to like life lessons and stuff like that. And, what I would say to people is like, well, first off, most people never find what their genetic limit is anyway. Because like things gonna get progressively harder to progress as you get closer to that. So, like most of us get nowhere near. Let's be brutally honest. Like with the type of people that do, sitting right there, for example, like all-time world records and that type of stuff, like that's 0.what% of the population. Most of us, I think, who are worrying about that probably really don't need to worry about that because we're nowhere near. Whereas those who probably are approaching it are just like, I'm going to keep going and see what happens. And you have no idea where that ceiling's going to be until you've worked hard enough for like 10, 15 years to really put things into context there. But regardless of where your upper ceiling is, the whole point of these like physical endeavors beyond like getting healthy, which we can all appreciate, is like you were born, or you should be walking uphill towards something. Like a challenge should be in front of you at all times. And this is your challenge. Like if you've decided to go on, it doesn't matter whether it's running or it's weightlifting or, whatever, it's extreme ironing. I don't care. It's a goal is in front of you that ideally recedes as you walk towards it. So you always have something to strive for. And it doesn't really matter what your limit is. And I just don't think that it's something that we're going to need to worry about. And, best case scenario, you get really close to your genetic limit. You have to get creative and you have to learn things. And that's really cool. That's why a podcast like this exists, right? Like we get some of the best athletes in our sports here because they're the ones who are like chipping away at that upper ceiling. They have to uncover the rocks or turn over the rocks, whatever, that other people don't have to try and find the 0.5% or 0.1%. And they learn things that none of us may have the opportunity to or never need to, but there are gems of wisdom there. And they've created a shortcut for us by doing that. I don't have to spend 10 years learning that lesson because I can learn them from it right now, which is the same way that I view the education and things like that. Like if they've spent 20 years going down that rabbit hole, I want to get the knowledge at the end of that rabbit hole so I don't have to. So I think it plays a pretty even role for everyone. And I don't think that's going to be specific to men, women, ethnicities, race, whatever. But I do think that we have way, way, way more control over our genetics in the epigenetic sense than we think. And I think a lot of preconceptions about genetic limits or what you're hardwired to be like are not as set in stone as people may think.
That's a good answer.
It's a pretty solid answer.
We've got a couple more like quick questions.
I am making these not quick. I'm sorry.
Yeah, quick fire
okay.
out the window.
Yeah. Okay, this one is quick though. What made you move to the US? And what did you get out of moving to the US that we didn't get back home?
Oh man, That's a long answer. God, diet root beer. I honestly here, when the first time we came here for that initial podcast, which was obviously like nerve wracking in every single way possible, it kind of just felt like this is where we're supposed to be. I can't describe it any better. Like even through the nerves, like it still felt like the right place to be. And the more time we spent here, and the more time I would say we spent contributing to Elite FTS, which I like to think we do a reasonable job of, it just kind of felt like I was putting effort into the right project. And I can't really describe it better than that. It just felt like when I put effort in here, it gave better returns. Not in that it's about being greedy and getting more out of it, but that it was just kind of like what I was supposed to be putting my effort into. And I think the difference is over here in the US that there's a bit more of a culture where people value athletic performance and strength more highly. And because of that, when something is higher in your priority list, when someone helps you with it, you respect it and appreciate it more. And like, everyone wants to be appreciated for what we do. Like, that's something that we can all kind of relate to. And it's not that we were not being appreciated before, don't get me wrong, but moving here, being associated with Elite FTS, and that obviously happened with Tib Army too. It was kind of like a gradual step-by-step process. Getting to work with individuals for whom these endeavors were more important made it implicitly more rewarding because you made more of a difference than when you did help them. And I think that's really what it kind of boils back down to. And I mean this in no derogatory way to this kind of demographic, but let's say you're a PT on the gym floor and like you're just counting reps for someone who doesn't really want to be there. Like even when they make progress, they don't really care as much because they don't want to be there. And like they're being strong-armed into it because their doctor has told them or whatever, right? Even when you make a positive difference for that person, it doesn't resonate with them in the same way to someone who is there because they love it, there because they want to be there because it's in their top 5 priorities. And then that person sees progress and it's so different. So that's probably the biggest difference that's from being based over here is that we're just making a bigger difference, not because we're doing anything differently, but because we're doing it with individuals for whom it is more important. For me, that's been the biggest thing I've gotten from moving here and working with Elite FTS from like a self-satisfaction, contentment, fulfillment point of view, however you want to put it. To me, sure, there have been plenty of other benefits to it. Meeting wonderfully handsome mustached individuals that live nearby has been a cool perk too. But no offense, they all kind of pale in comparison a little bit to that overarching feel of like, I am making a bigger difference doing what I do now.
Okay. I feel like that leads into, like, we wanted to kind of cover, like, your education, like, background, your pathway.
Sure.
So I guess we could start off by just saying, like, how did you first become interested in being a coach to begin with? Like, where did your journey start?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, my brother dragged me into the gym when I was 15. And it wasn't long after that started like voraciously reading every forum, except T-Nation, bodybuilding.com, where when forums was the place where information was stored, that's where I was. And then I'd probably been doing it for like a year at that point, but probably done enough reading to like take up 3 years worth of experience. And then you know what it's like your friends start asking you like, oh, can you write a program for me? And then you start writing programs down on freaking scraps of paper. And it's like, well, let's see how that goes. So it really started not long after I started lifting, to be honest, but I don't really tend to do things by halves. So like I was kind of all in right from the start, really. And then when we were at university together, I'd already been helping individuals like, in a completely casual approach for a couple of years at that point. Then the opportunity to get like an S&C accreditation came up with the university. So started working with some of the sports teams there, getting some education, but more so experience as part of that. So I did that for a year or two alongside my degree. And that was kind of where it had its faults for sure, but it certainly made me realize that was kind of where I wanted to be. So then when I came out of university, I just spent 4 years getting a degree, and then made the decision to not use that degree. I went and got a PT certification, which to this day is the only official certification that I have. And it has even the wrong date on it, which has never been called up. It says I got certified on the 1st of January, 1901, which has never been questioned at any interview, which is interesting. I think I look very good for my age is all I can say there. And it really just started from there. And then when it comes to like education from there, again, I haven't really done a lot of like external courses. I've worked with coaches. I've hired coaches. Again, like I've worked with Christian. That was how Christian and I made that connection. Worked with people like Justin Harris. I worked with Stefan Obe, who was associated with Christian. I worked with other individuals that like, they just interested me and I wanted to learn from them. So that seemed like the best avenue to go down. But before I had the finances to do that, it was just endless reading of whatever was freely available, like consume that. And that was kind of what allowed me then to, I feel more comfortable transitioning to being a personal trainer on the gym floor. A gym that was nearby called Nuffield, which was basically a mix of a Gen Pop gym and a rehab hospital, because Nuffield is a hospital chain too. So you've got your general Gen Pop, and then you've got your post-surgery rehab patients and everything in between. So you get exposed to like quite a large variance of individuals at that gym compared to like your average kind of chain gym. You know, you've been certified for 3 months and you're dealing with someone who's 3 months post hip operation or post hip replacement, for example. You have to learn pretty fast on the job there to work with us. So obviously the cost of messing that up is higher than someone who's just like got a general like want to lose weight and get fit kind of scenario there. So I was exposed to quite a varied population straight away. And then it kind of just became this weird step-by-step process then where I became the top performing PT at that gym. And then the opportunity came up to become a manager of that gym, like run the gym side of the business and the PT. So I just said yes. I didn't even know if that was what I wanted to do, but this is a recurring theme. Things happen, and I go, sure, why not? So then I became the manager. So then I was trying to juggle like 40 hours of PT a week plus the manager work, which was like 32 hours or something like that. So that was interesting. Then I had been working with, so like that went on for a couple of years. And then the next step was I had the financial resources then to hire Christian. I was a pain in the ass client in every single sense of the word, which I'm sure he will back up. But I'd been sending him like, oh, hey, just so you know, like Naomi and I were running a powerlifting team at that point. We had started competing. And then, you know, it's kind of like you start competing and as a PT, your clients are like, powerlifting, what's that? That sounds interesting. The singlet looks awful, but that sounds kind of cool. I want to try that. So then all of a sudden we started having want to be powerlifters kind of crowd around us. And all of a sudden we had a team. Like we went from just like not having any idea what we were doing to competing at Worlds and Europeans within like a year or two. And then we went from doing that very quickly to having like a gaggle of powerlifters around us who were all like, I want to give this a go. So then we quickly went to like competing on the world stage, but also having a powerlifting team whose youngest member was 15. And then our oldest member was 72. Like it couldn't have been more varied if you wanted it to be. And that was a super fun project. We met so many great people there. And, you know, that I think was a big part of our kind of education there too, because now not only are you dealing with a lot of variance in terms of demographic, but now you're trying to plug them all into an individual sport. Like they've all got the same end goal, but they all need to get there really differently. And they're all starting from really different kind of starting points. So we've been doing that for a while. Then I'd hired Christian. And I just was kind of sending him off the cuff, like, hey, just so you know, I'm Christian is the person whose material I consumed at the highest rate possible, because it was so varied, and I that interested me, how a coach could be so open-minded and varied, and also being able to admit that they were wrong about things and need to improve on things, which was nice to see.
I suppose it's different from, you know, most coaches have one system.
Yeah, exactly.
And stick to that only.
Yeah, I liked the idea that he was a coach that just didn't stick to one lane, because then you can only service so many people. Like that style of programming will only fit a certain demographic. And I don't want to work with one demographic. So that's why I got drawn to that. I started sending him some of the programs I was writing. Just like, hey, out of curiosity, like I took one of your programs, thought it was really cool, but I've like tweaked it and tailored and stuff for like a powerlifting meet or for this person. And eventually he was kind of like, okay, this is interesting. Like you have an interesting understanding of my work. And it started off from there. Again, this is just me saying yes to things. He was like, well, okay, so like, you seem to understand my work very well. Can you start proofreading all the stuff that I write and put out? So like, that was my step into Tib Army. And with Christian, I was proofreading all his PDFs and his programs and his articles and stuff like that. That probably went on for a year. And that, for me as a coach, that was great. I was like, I get all these programs for free that I can kind of like tinker with and like break apart and understand and then kind of repurpose and stuff. That was awesome. And that quickly, that, you know, like a year later, he was kind of like, well, now you pretty much know everything that's on the website. Like, would you mind doing the customer service emails? Because like people will email in like, what program do I buy? And, you know, he doesn't have the time to deal with that. And anyone else that you hire doesn't know his material that well. So I did it. So I spent probably the best part of another year just doing the proofreading and responding to emails like, this is the program you should buy.
I will say, I think some of the emails you would get though were they were intense.
They were
People were asking like a lot of questions. So people were using it as an opportunity to learn from you, but you know,
there was a lot of like, can you write this program for me? It's a little bit outside the scope of customer. I get that service is in the name, but yeah, there was a lot of interesting requests there along the way. But then, you know, having been involved for maybe like 2 years now, Christine was like, well, now we want to open up our online coaching service again. People obviously go to Tib Army for online coaching because they want to be coached either by him or in the vein of him. You know my stuff better than anyone else. Would you be willing to do that? So of course I just say yes. I'm like, I am working 70 hours a week at the gym I'm at, you know, doing the in-person work and the manager work. But like, when's that opportunity going to come up again? Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, hey, here's the person that you probably look up to more than anyone in terms of their training philosophy. They're offering to work, like for you to work with them. You just say yes. You don't question that. I didn't know what I was going to get paid. I didn't know what I was going to involve. I didn't know how many clients I was going to get. It was just, sure, you know, you say jump, how high scenario type thing. So I took that on, and that was another like fantastic step into a different genre of coaching with the online stuff. I was already doing some online coaching at that point, but very small amounts. You know, by that point, I've been coaching in person for like 4 or 5 years, had a reasonable skill set that I thought I could carry over. But even if I didn't, I would have said yes anyway and just learn on the job, because again, when do you get the opportunity? And, you know, from there, that slowly became, okay, so, you know, oh, Tom, you seemed like pretty clued up on like the technical side of things and like the powerlifting and the big lifts and stuff like that. Then it was, well, do you want to join me in a seminar and give like a section on assistance lifts and technical work? And I was like, I am vastly underprepared for this in every single sense. Yes. So then, you know, the first one we did together was Czech Republic. And like I said, I can't even sum up the words to say how nervous I was about that. And I'm sure it came across, but again, you're not going to get that chance again. So there I was doing that. And that, you know, we did a couple more together, and then it became making an online course together because he liked how I approached the barbell lifts and all that type of thing. And, you know, throughout this entire time, our powerlifting team is becoming a bit more successful. You know, we did, I started writing. That was another thing that came up. You know, he was like, well, I write for T Nation. Would you ever want to write an article? I was like, okay. I wrote a couple of articles and just sent one of them to him. And he was like, oh, just so you know, I passed that on to Chris Sugar. I was like, what? That was like a draft. He's like, Chris Sugar is the owner or the person who runs T Nation, or did at the time. I'm not sure what their deal is now. So I just wrote up an article. I was like, let's see what Christian thinks of that. He's like, T Nation are going to run it. I was like, I didn't even spell check it. But there, I hope they did in retrospect now. But then there it was. And I was like, oh, so is this a thing now? He's like, well, if you want it to be, like, they're open to more ideas, just kind of tell them what you're thinking. And then that evolved into like writing articles for like British Strength magazine and, you know, and a few other outlets too. So now I was writing and coaching, and then coaching at the gym and managing it sounds really dumb when I say it all out loud like this, I've got to be honest. And then, you know, my most successful client did rather well, and, you know, got to the point where she was at the top level of her sport, which kind of got us then in with Dave, and an opportunity to come out here to Elite FTS. And again, this was another scenario where when we came out, Dave was kind of like, do you want to do some content whilst you're here? And it's just like, well, yes. Like, again, when does that opportunity ever come up again? So we did some content. It went kind of well. Dave obviously seemed to like the way that we took it. So when we came out again for Naomi's next competition, we offered to come back out and do some more content if that would have been useful, you know, just off our own back or whatever. He said yes. And then we were back here again for another podcast. And then I suppose you don't get it if you don't ask. So then we were like, well, we kind of like it here. We like doing the work. We like recording the content. We think it's helping people. It's obviously good for our exposure too. Could we come out here for like 3 or 4 months? Naomi would prep for a competition, and in return for us being able to train here for that time, we'll make some content for you, whatever would be useful, and so on and so forth. One thing led to another, and by the end of that 3 months, I don't know how many videos we'd made, but it'd been quite a lot. Helped out on a few podcasts, which again was another thing. The first time Dave asked, "Do you want to co-host a table talk?" It was like, Jesus Christ, yes, but like again, nerve-wracking in every single sense. I don't think I felt prepared for any of these things in any sense. But I think that's probably the takeaway that people should maybe get from this. I didn't ever feel like I was like preparing for them or was in the right position to say yes to them. I just kind of did. And then at the end of that 3 or 4 month phase, Dave was like, so do you have to go home or could you like kind of stay? And fortunately, you can't just stay in America because you want to as much as we wanted to. So we had to go home and go through that whole process. And then, since we got back here now, it's just gone from one step to another, when we were out here for the Swiss, I helped out with my first Train Your Ass Off event. That was fun. And also kind of like a privilege for sure. And again, my role in those has just kind of grown a little bit by bit. And it's just been like this steady stream of kind of what sound like huge steps from the outside, but actually in the day to day have probably been quite small steps. Until now we're here, and we're progressively doing more and more here, which I appreciate massively, and I hope that we're doing what is expected or wanted from us. But I'd say it's been a weird journey, but at no point has my goal been like, I want to work for Dave at Elite FTS, I want to work for Christian. It's been whatever the thing is I'm doing right now, do it to the absolute best of my ability, and then when an opportunity arises, I said yes. That I'm the worst business person ever. But
I think there's a lot to learn from that though, because you obviously said, I think the thing I wanted to highlight was that you said you didn't ever feel prepared for anything, but you just gave it a go.
Sure.
And I feel like that's a really important point.
Yeah.
Like you pushed yourself into something that you were super interested in, did as much as you could to learn about it. An opportunity arose eventually. And I feel like we shouldn't downplay the fact that there's like periods where like 4 years you were like in the grind working, 2 years, like you then get offered like a small chance because you've dedicated 2 years, but yeah, I think something you said just is really interesting, that you never felt prepared.
No,
but you just said yes.
Yeah,
because you just never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I'm sure luck plays a role, but I found that the harder I worked, the luckier I got. And I really like in German, the term for coincidence is Zufall, which again, I probably pronounced horribly and I'm sorry. But it's basically the idea that Zufall basically means something falls towards you. So like a coincidence is something, an event in your life falls towards you. But then the question from that then is, why did it fall to you and not to someone else? Yeah. And that's where I like kind of think I did my part, at least I think, is at least if I did all the right things and worked really hard, it was probably more likely that opportunity would fall to me. And then when it did fall to me, I sure as hell didn't say no. So I just did the bits that I could, but I'm sure it could have gone so differently, but I sure as hell wasn't going to like turn down any of these things.
Well, that was one of the questions that we got sent in, was what decision was made at each step. And if I have to sum it up, it sounds like, does this thing move me closer or deeper into what I want to do? Then it's not a decision, it's a yes.
Yeah, like it. That's a very good way of putting it, to be fair. Like, when I tried to explain it to like my mom, for example, who has nothing to do with this world, but thanks to my dad, she's been quite thoroughly indoctrinated into soccer because you had to be. I said to her, like being at this point now where I work for Christian, I work for Dave, it's kind of like being a soccer coach in like Real Madrid and Man United knocking on your door and saying, hey, do you want to work for both of us? Like, you don't ask what the salary is. You don't ask when you start. You don't even ask what you're doing. You just go, yes. And that's how it felt to me. If I had come here and was freaking scrubbing the toilets and manning the desk or whatever, not there's anything wrong with doing those things, I would have done that because like, who knows where that leads? So you're right. I felt like I wanted to go further into this world of developing my knowledge and helping more people. And, it's just like, I never had, a drive or like a goal to be an author. but like the opportunity came up like, hey, do you want to write a book with Christian, which was for Human Kinetics? And then Human Kinetics said, hey, do you want to write like a book on your own? And it's like, well, I'm only one person. There are only 24 hours in a day, despite my best efforts. If a book is another way, another mode that I can help other people develop their knowledge base or whatever it is they're trying to do, then why would I not do that, I suppose? And like, I wouldn't describe myself as an author or writer, like intrinsically. It's not what I'm like gifted for or anything like that. I find it very difficult, but some people are going to learn from the podcasts that we do. Some people are going to learn from articles. Some people are going to learn because they hire me as a coach. And some other people are going to buy the book, which is great. It's just another way of casting the net wider. And I guess, even without me knowing, perhaps that's been the subconscious goal the whole time. But who knows? I would like to think that's been it.
So you've found yourself in a position multiple times where you've said yes to a thing and then maybe didn't feel prepared for it ahead of time. Knowing what we know about you, you put the work in as soon as the opportunity showed up. I don't know enough about this for my own sake, even if you may have. So what does that look like now? When you were in university, you take this class and then you take this class and then you take this class. And after that, when you become a coach, I want to read these books by Christian and these articles by this person because that's the path. But I'm coached by you and she has been coached by you. And we know that you didn't have a linear education on this stuff. So how do you educate yourself now on the wildly different things that you educate yourself on?
Good question. Again, I'm still kind of taking the approach of focusing on people. So like right now I work with Alex Kickel. And the reason I've done that is because I want to know what he knows. Like, is making my own progress nice? Sure. That's cool. But really it's like he knows things and has a thought process that I want to develop. And how is one going to see behind the curtain better than working with them through yourself? Because then you see in real time how that individual problem solves and comes up with ideas and things like that. So there has been a lot of that. Like I got coached by Christian for an extended period of time in the same way. But now for me, it's being more open-minded about where you can learn from. Because like some of the stuff that I've learned that I now apply to like weightlifting come from things that are completely unrelated. Like for example, some of the stuff that I put into like the split squat video that we released whenever it was. Thank you, Noah, as always. For that, like some of those light bulb moments came because I was working with a fencer, competitive fencer. Who and what position is a competitive fencer always in? Split stance. How do they create stability in those positions? How do they approach them and things like that? And I was like, oh, okay. So like if that's how a fencer creates stability and the ability to be reactive and move quickly in that position, maybe that's kind of how we should be adopting how we execute a split squat, because it's going to be the same principle. Like whatever grounds you and aligns you better is going to work well. And it's very similar to like the Kung Fu and the Shaolin stuff. Like they're not talking about moving a weight unless you say the weight is your body. But it's still the same principle. It's still the same bones, muscles, levers, tendons. It's still how you align yourself against gravity in that way. So now I would say my perspective is broader now in terms of like I'm trying to learn from psychologists, philosophers, different sports, and different cultures. Like the Eastern world looks at the human body in a totally different way. Like I've done a lot of research in like traditional Chinese medicine, all that type of thing. And, other people might think that's a bit weird or a bit hoodoo or whatever, but the fact of the matter is like they found stuff that works that we're only kind of experiencing or surely understanding now. But they look at things so differently to what we do. And it can't be a case of right or wrong because they're having success. So there must be so many different avenues of approaching the human body and how we exist and how we perform and so on and so forth. And I think the broader you can cast your perspective there, the better it's going to be and the less dogmatic you're going to become, which I think is, for me personally, is a goal. Like I understand that other coaches want to have just a single philosophy and double down on that and be the expert at that, and power to them. That's one way of doing it. And, I'm grateful those people exist because those are the people I learned from. My goal is just, I want to learn 70 or 80% of what that person knows about that thing they doubled down on and try and do that across the broadest possible range. So now I would say a lot of my insights, at least with regards to training and movement, a lot of it comes from my own training now. Because I feel like I've been kind of put on this path through this perspective where like you can understand the human body and its intricacies in ways that you didn't think were either possible or just didn't exist. Now that you've become aware of them, it's kind of really hard to not go down that rabbit hole. So now every training session for me is like, yeah, sure, I want to make progress and I want to tick a box and say that it's been done. But it's more about like experimenting with these rabbit holes of like, how does the pelvis perform? How do we create a better relationship with the ground? How do we lock in a certain posture in a certain way, like using it? Because even the way that you stand can be approached differently, which I know is probably going to sound really dumb to some people, but it's, first thing I said to the last couple of train your ass offs is you don't know how to breathe, you don't know how to stand. And like, sounds really arrogant to say that to some of the best lifters in the country, but like, lo and behold, we go through this stuff and they're like, oh, I didn't know how to stand or breathe. But again, I'm sure at some point I'm going to think I have that nailed down and my eyes are going to be blown wide open once again by like, oh, I understood that at a level, but there are like another 5 levels beneath that I don't know about. So if I had to like underpin anything that guides my current level of education, it's that there is just an unfathomable amount of stuff that you can know but don't know. And I'm at the point now where I still almost daily encounter things and I'm like, how did I not know that already? So call it what you want, call it like curiosity, call it drive, call it determination. I don't really know, but I think when you're just trying to answer a question that you genuinely want the answer to, which is like, how do I do all this stuff better? Like, how does a human become better in every sense? The rest kind of takes care of itself, I guess. Maybe that's overly simplistic, but that would be what underpins it for me.
Cool. Okay, so off the back of that, what have you, continued to do, and what have you moved away from? Like from the influences that you've had over the years. Obviously, you've named a few people there. Sure. Is there anything that you will continue to do? Anything that you won't continue to do?
Sure. I think the biggest thing I've dropped is the idea that there's a universally or absolutely correct answer to anything. Like we've come here and, we get exposed to a lot of things related to like West Side and Conjugate, for example. And then you go to you have a different podcast guest on who's exposed to a completely different training philosophy, but has fantastic success with themselves or their clients. And there's a reason that like it depends becomes a bit of a funny buzzword or term, right? Or a t-shirt, because the truth is that like all of these things work in the right context at the right time with the right person. So I would say the most important thing that I've dropped is stop looking for some kind of ultimate answer or some kind of absolute, because it doesn't exist. And if it did exist, we'd all know it by now, and all of these conversations would be pointless. The whole reason that like podcasts about training exist, why training courses and people still hire coaches, is because we haven't found the ultimate answer, because there isn't one. But every coach, through their individual experiences and expertise, is going to have a different take or a different answer to the same problem. And when you look at it like that, it becomes a lot easier to discern the information that you want to consume and what you want to kind of not disregard or get rid of, but stuff that maybe isn't worth adding to your current toolkit. So I'd say the biggest thing I've dropped is looking for an absolute. And also, I've also dropped the idea that like there is anyone that you cannot learn from. Like everyone that you encounter, you have something to learn. Might not be related to training, but they have something they can teach you. I mean, hell, I would actually say my biggest source of education has been my clients. Like I've had no formal training or education, technically, beyond a PT certification, but every client that you coach is a case study. It's like an N=1 case study. And if you coach enough clients, either in person or remotely, over enough time, and digest the information that they give you back, either, through your communication or just even the results they get or not, you get so much data from that. And that, I think, isn't talked about enough. Like, are you actually analyzing the results of what you're doing? Are you using that and your client's feedback to refine what you do? Because I honestly think that has been the biggest source of education for me. I think there are things that you learn doing that you absolutely cannot learn anywhere else in any other way, other than you just have to go do the thing and figure out for yourself based on how that goes. So I would say those would be the biggest takeaways for me from like what's changed, I guess, in terms of education.
Okay. What interests you about Shaolin, and how are you incorporating that into your own practice?
What interested me?
Yeah.
I think there's so many things. But first off, it was the completely different perspective on how a human body moves. They have like a 4-tiered system to movement, which is like 5 tiers, I'm sorry. Li, Jin, Qi, Shen, and Kong. Kong and then Shen. And like their idea is that Li, which I'm probably pronouncing all of them terribly, I'm sorry, is level 1, which is the muscular system. Like that is movement where their perception is based in the muscular system. And like, that's where all of us are in their eyes, I guess. But we're stuck there. But for them, that's like level 1 of 5. They go like, that's like the basic level. That's what you do with like a beginner who doesn't know how to move, like they're Bambi on ice, basically. And then the idea is that you transform over time, or your perception of movement transforms over time. Like Jin is the idea that there are basically like power lines that run through the body, and you manipulate those. So you don't look at the body as individual joints and muscle groups. You look at them as a series of connections, and then creating movement is like how you relate those connections to each other. Like, i.e. the squat, the idea would be that like the power line, inverted commas, would be like basically from the kneecaps to the crown of the head. And like basically a squat is simply pushing the ends of that connection further away from each other. And then Qi basically goes a level further then, where basically the body is viewed as like a hydraulic pump, and like you pump energy into different areas to create movement, which I probably am not well versed enough to speak on any further than that at this point, but that's my goal. And then beyond that is like you're in the Matrix, probably. As far as my perception goes, I'm not well versed enough to like comment on that any further, but hopefully I will be one day. So there was that. There was the radical shift in perspective of like, okay, like there's a totally different way of looking at every single movement that I do and program. But then beyond that, the thing that I really liked about it was the emphasis of quality and self-mastery, which I think is missing from a lot of strength training. Now, don't get me wrong, like I don't want to sit here and tell people everyone should train a certain way. That's not what I'm saying. But for me personally, what I really like about strength training and lifting, etc., is that focus on self-mastery and the quality of the work that you do. And I think that's missing. Like in Kung Fu and other martial arts, it's not how many kicks you throw, it's how good they are, and there's a certain respect element that comes around your art. Like Kung Fu is my art form. I treat it with a certain level of respect. It's not something I do haphazardly. Same with anyone who like really gets into playing an instrument or something like that. You understand what I mean? And I think there's just a way of viewing what that project represents for them, which is different. Like the martial art is the cultivation of the person. Yes, there are physical feats, and some of them can be fantastic and very cool and whatnot. But the real underlying premise is like, what do we cultivate in the person that leads to the physical outcomes that maybe more people are drawn to on the aesthetic level? And I think more people need that. And I think there's a way of getting that from strength training and lifting, which currently maybe is missing, or people are doing it and I don't know about it. But I think that's more what people need right now. Sure, we all need, like most people need more muscle and to get stronger and all this type. That's great, sure. But what more people I think truly need and end up gleaning from this endeavor is they apply hard work to something and they get a certain outcome, and it builds confidence. It builds the idea of consistent effort over time. It builds the idea of delayed gratification, and it builds characteristics of a person who performs better in real life, for want of a better term. And I know there's a way of making strength training a martial art. There's a way of doing that. I just don't really know what it is yet, beyond like me coaching people in the really weird way that I do it, and probably like most people thinking I'm like zany and insane. Like, but I think there's a way of reframing strength training from this like bullish meathead approach, which again, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what appeals to you, but there's going to be a lot of people that doesn't appeal to. But there's a different way of framing it to this more quality based cultivation of the person style outcome, and that's what I'm trying to achieve. Like I literally said to Naomi like yesterday, like in a joking manner, like my perfect gym would be like basically like a Dharma hall or like a temple with a weight room in it. You know, like there's something about it. And like I said, there's a video I watched of like Japanese weightlifters, and when they walk in, like you have to take your shoes off when you go in the weightlifting hall. And you can't put your Olympic lifting shoes on until you're on the platform. Your shoes are not allowed to touch the floor. They get on the platform, they would bow to the equipment, they would clean it, they would sweep the platform when they're done, they would brush down the bar when they're done. Everything would go back in the... And that, I know to some people that'll sound like really weird, but like I think that what that teaches you is like respect for your art and your craft. You know, like that barbell, that platform, that's where they do their work, and they want to look after the thing they do their work on, and so that other people can do their work to a high level. And I think that the ingraining of confidence, but also value in what you dedicate your time and effort to is something that I want to try and shift a perspective to, even if it's only for my benefit.
Yeah.
So you said in an interview recently that a goal is the Shaolin temple of weightlifting. And so we heard you talk about some things that are lacking in, say, modern fitness culture. Do you think that those two ideas, the idea of the Shaolin temple for weightlifting and the things that are lacking, are married at self-mastery? Like whatever your thing is, whether it's Olympic lifting or powerlifting or strongman for our friends that do that, like the thing that's lacking there is the pursuit of mastery and not just the pursuit of pick the thing up.
Yes, but also that also goes, I mean, there's a definite technical execution side to that, you know, in terms of how you lift the weight. I think that can be framed differently.
Yeah.
But there's also the self-mastery side of like, how do you approach your programming? Like, do you treat it with the respect that you should? Are you program hopping every 2 weeks because you're bored? Are you on your phone multitasking, which doesn't exist, during your session? Are you distracted? Are you actually applying yourself fully to the thing that you're doing? Because if not, then it's not teaching you all the things that it could be teaching you, right? Like, and this is kind of what I'm probably trying to like very poorly verbalize, is the idea is that this is your craft, and the better you are fully present and putting the highest quality possible workload into your craft, the better your results will be. And you get this objective feedback of like, we get stronger, you know, for us that are interested in strength, for example. And that's a great reinforcer of like, well, are you doing that to all the other things that are important to you? And all of us will say no to that to varying degrees, because humans don't do anything perfectly, but it serves as a nice microcosm for the rest of your life. Like, how those Japanese weightlifters approach that barbell and that platform, like that's probably also how they approach many other facets of their life. And I think a lot of us would probably look at that and go, I could probably do that better. And I would probably have a greater quality of life if I approached everything with the intensity and the respect that they do that. So yeah, I think they are married together, depending on your interpretation of Shaolin culture and what I'm talking about, sure. But I think there's a, I don't want to say spiritual, because I don't really think it is, but there's an attitude or perspective-based benefit that you could get from really treating your craft or your weightlifting in this way. And I think not enough people are getting that right now. I think they're haphazardly going through it. Sure, they're getting results, which is fantastic, but they're just not getting as much benefit out of the thing as they could be.
Brilliant. Cool. So I think we're going to move on to like this kind of second half, which kind of touches on your mental health journey. We had quite a few questions about your mental health. So to just kind of kickstart that off, what are the challenges that you have faced yourself?
Existence is the challenge. I suppose I talked about this, I can't remember if it was the first table talk we did or whatever, but it's been a hodgepodge of suicidal depression, anxiety, eating disorders, body dysmorphia, and I'm remiss to put other terms on it because it's all the same thing. But what's the end result of that? I suppose from like an eating disorder standpoint, like at one point I was, I don't know, like 110 pounds, which, at 5'11" or whatever I am without my mohawk is probably not a great place to be. My hair was falling out, like my gums and stuff were bleeding from malnutrition. So I remember at one point I was like eating like probably a couple of hundred calories like every other day, running every day, and all the, all the stereotypical things that come with that. I literally did though go from that to, I think I nearly doubled my body weight in about a year. Got some crazy stretch marks to prove that too. Just going the complete other way with food, like binging and stuff like that. Binge eating was a considerable problem for a lot longer though in that. On the depression side of things, I mean, for sake of convenience, I tell people that I attempted suicide 6 times, but in reality, I don't really know how many it is because I don't know how you count something like that. Like, if you lay in a bathtub for an hour and put your head under 12 times because you're hoping it's going to be the end, is that 12 or is that 1? Every time I like cut my wrist, there was a hope that it would be the one that did it, but it wasn't. I can't tell you how many times I did that. So like 6 is just a convenient number. In reality, I guess it's a lie, but like I don't really know how else do you verbalize that in a short way for the convenience of a conversation. But the self-harming was a huge part of that for quite a long time, especially while I was at university, where my arms, my legs, and then to a latter degree like my face were covered in cuts all the time. I think that did get to the point where, especially like doing it like around here, I think at that point I was genuinely doing it because I wanted to make my life worse because I felt like that was deserved. Or maybe you do that because then it makes it easier to actually end it. Like if you make it bad enough, it's easier to let go of it then, I guess. So like a lot of my tattoos are kind of semi there to cover up a lot of the scars from that. I mean, I had the word hate like carved into my arm for like months and things like that. So it was been quite the mishmash of experiences, I guess, from binge eating and anorexia through to suicide attempts and everything in between. I don't know how you sum that up as what have you been challenged by, but it's that. I guess the lowest possible sense of self-worth is probably a decent way of summing it up. Or like, I don't know, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, to be brutally honest with you. But also I also now perceive it as a gift. So it's a very strange one. I'm actually very glad that I went through it because I wouldn't be the person I was if I didn't. So it's hard to answer what the challenge was, but I would like to think that going from that to where I am now is at least some kind of cool indication to other individuals that, that radical change is possible. I mean, unfortunately, there are going to be people that have it worse than I did. I've spoken to some of them, so I know that's the case, and I wish that wasn't the case, but none of it is a death sentence, which sounds like a very ironic thing to say considering what I just divulged, I know, but I suppose the challenge has been, how do you deal with creating a life you want to live when you don't want to be here? That was probably the hardest one, but we kind of got there in the end, I suppose.
So you mentioned radical change is possible. Mm-hmm. And I suspect that over the course of the journey, the strategies changed quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So how have those strategies changed from the beginning to now? Mm-hmm. What worked, what didn't work? Sure.
I think the biggest, I suppose you call it a strategy, but it's not. It didn't feel that way at the time. How do you? So when you're in a very dark, I don't want to speak for other people, so I should say, when I was in the worst possible place that I could imagine, I created an identity around being miserable. Like I was but I almost took pride in it. Like I am the person who can suffer unimaginably. And I like wore that like a badge of honor. When people like didn't like me, thought I was weird, or like wanted to avoid me, it'd be like, well, they couldn't live a single day as me. And like that, I guess in a way that kind of helps you get through the day. Thank you. Like gives maybe a little bit of meaning to the suffering that you're experiencing. But the problem is when you create an identity around suffering and misery, where is your avenue away? Because then you're like doubling down on that. you're trying to, you're almost, and like I said, I definitely got to the point where I was actively trying to make my life harder and worse. So there was a very slow, very, very slow process of moving my identity towards someone that could do something other than suffer. And that's where I think, honestly, like my choice of, obviously Naomi played a huge step in this too. But I think creating a career where I am able to help other people achieve things was a huge part of that. Because to be brutally honest, for many, many years, I guess, I completely gave up on the idea of actually being happy in any real sense of the word. And when you don't have that to strive for, you do potentially have the happiness of fulfillment of others to strive for. It's like, well, if I'm going to have to persist on this mortal plane against my will, but I can't be happy, what can I do? Well, I can make other people happy, or I can, help them on their journey or something like that. And I think that's where this career path really helped me. And I think if I hadn't gone on this career, I would have ended up in some other career where I could have ticked that box. So then slowly over time, then I think I just developed tiny amounts of self-worth based on the contentment and the fulfillment I was allowing other people to achieve. I wouldn't really say any of it was like truly my own. I wouldn't say it was like within me, but like I at least felt good about what I spent my time doing. And then from there, I guess it very gradually turned into like, well, I could just keep doing this. Like, is this meaningful? I think it's meaningful. And over time, it wasn't that I forgot how I felt before. I didn't even feel that way. Like, it's still there in my head, very much so. I have some probably opinions about that other people would see very differently, but I don't think that goes away personally. I think I have a brain chemistry that's kind of hardwired towards that. And I know if I don't do the right things, I could be back there really, really fast. But it's a great motivator nonetheless. But over time then, as I had more positive impacts on other individuals, that very slowly like planted a seed of self-worth in me. And that just continued to grow. And like, I suppose it kind of resonates when we talked about the career path. Like at no point has the goal, like, I don't want to be great at something. Like I want to be an author or whatever. Like I just want to help people because that actually makes me feel like decent about the fact that I'm still alive. So I guess everything that's kind of happened from that has just facilitated that to a greater degree. And as I've done that to a greater degree, I've detested myself slightly less every step along that journey, to the point now where now I actually invest in myself, because now it's gotten to the point where it's like, you could be a person that other people want to be like, potentially. And I know that sounds very arrogant to say, and I don't mean it in an arrogant sense, but what I mean is like, why don't you practice what you preach, and why don't you be the thing that you want other people to be? Because what better example is there than you doing it? So it kind of got to that point where like, you're going to be a hypocrite if you don't stop being miserable. Don't start working on yourself, because all your self-worth comes from you encouraging other people to work on themselves. And all the way through this journey, the thing that like counselors and therapists really struggled with me, I think, was that I was just ruthlessly logical. Like they would obviously talk about suicide and things like that. And I said, well, if every waking hour of your day is misery, give me a solid argument against suicide. It's like, let's remove all the, like, do it. And you can't really, like, from a logical standpoint. I think that was perhaps why I didn't respond well to it. Not that it doesn't work for other individuals, I would always encourage everyone to try it, that's for sure. But I out-logicked myself eventually, where it's like, well, this is the impact you want to have on the world. These are the things that you want to do, and you're not doing them. Like, you're a hypocrite. And at that point, your hands are kind of tied. So again, bit by bit, started to like talk about myself differently, look at myself differently. And I still think I do it through the lens of like, if you do all this stuff really well, you have more to impart upon other people. I don't think any of it is really truly for me as such. Maybe that's self-aggrandizement there. I don't know. But that has been a process which has led to, I could not imagine being the person I am now even 5 years ago. I mean, when I was 18, I didn't think I was going to live like the next day, never mind like to 21 or 25 or 30, which is why when Naomi met me, and, put up with a lot when she met me, I assure you, I didn't want kids, I didn't want to get married, whatever. But it's like, well, but you got to ask yourself, like, if you don't think you're going to survive past next week, how can you value any of those things? But now when you get past that and you start to think there is a future, well, now your perspective on absolutely everything changes. And that, I think that was a huge part of it. And, you know, now where I'm at now is, I think how it can be summed up is, and I'm going to paraphrase this, so I don't want to butcher it, but the Matthew principle in the Bible. I'm not Christian, by the way, but this is fantastically worded. It's that to those who have, it's to those who have plenty or many, more will be given. And to those who have nothing, more will be taken. And the idea is that basically progress begets progress in both directions. Like, your life can be infinitely good or it can be infinitely terrible. And I never would have believed that like 5 or 10 years ago, but like I went the other way, and I know there is no limit to how miserable your existence can be. I could have kept going, I'm sure, and I would have found new depths that I can't even imagine. But because there is an infinite low, there must also be some form of infinite high. And I just had to do enough work to get the pendulum swinging in the other direction. And now it feels like I am definitely on that upward swing where I've created positive momentum. And now because of that, more horizons kind of open and opportunities are open in front of me. My eyes are open to things that they wouldn't have been before. And now I honestly don't know how good things can get, but I'm going to damn sure as hell try and find out. And I think that mental shift has taken a long time, but I think, again, that's one that every single person can take. And if you don't think that that's true, make your life miserable for a year. Trust me, you'll find that what you think is rock bottom is never actually rock bottom. And then because that exists, in my opinion, the reverse must exist. And I feel that that's where I am now. I can't even remember what the question was, but hopefully that has kind of answered it.
Yeah, you at least beat up all around it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
I'm very sorry.
You talked about counseling's great.
Mm-hmm.
Counseling works for a great many people.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't necessarily the thing for you,
Mm-hmm.
at least at that time. What daily habits are you using now to maintain this upward trajectory
Mm-hmm.
of your mental health?
The biggest one is reminding myself why I'm here. When you have a purpose, which I didn't have for a long time, a lot of other things become very easy. And when that purpose becomes be the best possible version of yourself that you can so that you can provide for those that you care for, those that you work with, a lot of things kind of have to fall in place for you to do that. You know, like you have to sleep well, eat well, train, whatever it is that is important to you and plays into that. So a lot of that is kind of almost intrinsic when you align yourself with a purpose and a goal that you feel is genuinely important to you on like a very deeply rooted level. A lot of those smaller things I feel kind of fade away, but that takes a lot of effort, I think, to remind yourself of for a long time. Like I very much struggled with how I view myself, how I talk about myself, how I perceive myself, so on and so forth. So a lot of the habits I have implemented have been related to like how I talk about myself and things like that. Like I used to be someone who criticized himself a lot, like even jokingly, and I've had to like very, very harshly like curb that, for example. I've also had to, there she goes. There's the assistant coach speaking up right there. So like, but also doing the things that like human beings were kind of not made to do, but things that are more in line with like what we're supposed to do. So like I do grounding work every day. I do red light therapy. I do all the things that the pessimistic scientist in me would have said is absolute bullshit 5 years ago, maybe not even 5 years ago. I begin every day with a mantra, you know, like a positive mantra. I try to watch the sunrise and meditate every morning and things like, again, these are all things that if you just told me 5 years ago, like these things will stop you feeling terrible, I'd been like, you're so full of crap. And the more tinfoil hat stuff I did, the better I felt. And I don't know whether it was the thing, like the red light therapy, the grounding, the positive self-talk, the meditation, or whether it was just making the conscious effort to do something that you know is good for you, which is something I didn't do for a very long time. So it could just be the fact that like I am consciously going out of my way to expend effort to make myself a better person is the thing that makes me feel like a better person, regardless of what the thing is that I'm doing. Or it could be all of those things are absolutely wonderful and have all these beautiful effects on me. I don't know. But, you know, so the red light, the grounding, the meditation, I journal every single day. Naomi's got me some Stoic journals, for example, which I've been going through right now, but I've gone through various other journals. I can't remember what the name of the Dig Deeper journals. I went through those. That's been really cool. Again, like a lot of self-reflection stuff that, you know, again, not that long ago, I would have said, I don't really understand what that's supposed to do for you. That's been a huge part of it too. And just really kind of doubling down on what I feel my purpose is, which is to help other people and be a better coach. So I spend an extortionate amount of time and money on education now, because I just felt that when I do that more or better, I feel better about who I am. I'm working on the part of me that I feel gives me a purpose and self-worth. So that's been the hardest habit, is to like pull yourself away from the self-destructive things that you do, or the things that maybe placate you in the short term, but don't add to what your grand goal is or your mission is in the long term, which, you know, is obviously something that we all wrestle with. But that has been a big part of it. But I suppose for me as well, a big part of it was removing stimulation, or yeah, that's probably a good way of wording it. Because again, when I was going through whatever you want to class what I was going through, I was very dependent on stimulation to get through the day. Like sitting in silence for like 5 minutes, even being on my own for a short period of time was a freaking nightmare. Because like, then all you've got is you, and I hate me. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be, so like, I love music, but I loved music way too much, because like music was the way of distracting me from what I'm actually thinking about. Or like I had to be around people all the time. Like it would be video games and all this type of, not that any of those things are intrinsically bad at all, but when you're using them to distract you from something and they become a crux or a dependency to hide to because you're not working on the thing you really need to work on, then that's a problem. So like, I now spend like the first several hours of my day in silence. Like I come here and I train in silence now most, whereas I couldn't have even done that like a year ago. Like I would need a pick me up, inverted commas, but like I've slowly tried to peel away all of the things I felt that I depended on for like feeling better, getting through the day, whatever it might be. And the weird thing is, the more I've peeled away, the better I've felt. Sure, it's hard. Like I would love to just come in 5 a.m. in the morning, although I'd wake Blaine up if I did this, and like play Lorna Shore crazy loud and go nuts during my workout. Like, sure, the adrenaline rush would be fantastic, but like the problem for that is like I like it too much. It does too much for me, and that just goes down the rabbit hole of like pulling me to like this dependency now. Whereas the more I have like peeled that away and been willing to just feel whatever it is that I'm feeling, which can be hard at times for sure, the better everything has got. So again, I don't really even know if I answered that question that well there, but there's the biggest daily habit has been how I look at everything I do, which again sounds like a non-answer. I understand that, but that is the truth.
I think that tees up the next question Naomi's going to ask very well. You sort of describe a self-perpetuating cycle. I was putting bad in, I was getting good out. Or I was putting bad in, I was getting bad out. I'm doing these kind of woo-woo things that I'm told are good, but the science in me doesn't make sense. And I'm getting good out because I'm doing these things. And now you get here to train at what the rest of us have started calling Tom early, in that it's our nighttime and it is the beginning of your day. So I think that start from there. We've talked about the mental health tools. I think the thing that Naomi's going to lead into now is what that day looks like with the rest of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just what does your average day look like? I mean, obviously I know the answer to that, but we want everyone else.
You don't know you know the answers.
I know most of it.
Could be parts you don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so the mantra is done when I wake up. That could be various things, but it's inevitably something positive about being the best version of yourself that you can be that day. Go downstairs, take all my supplements, which there are probably far too many of. And then from there, I do a speech drill, which basically involves taking a word that I want to learn, which is usually a chemical name. for a cool peptide or something that I'm learning about, and I say it 15 to 20 times over and over again, progressively faster, without the goal of to not get tongue-tied when I say it. So like this morning was N-acetyl L-polyglycine ethyl ether, which is Nupept. That basically turns on Broca's area and Wernicke's area and a bunch of other cool places in your brain that just basically gives you a little bit of a kickstart. I have the Four Noble Truths and the why can I not think of the term now? The right view, the right intentions, the Eightfold Noble Path. Apologies. I have that on the wall in my desk, above my desk. I read those every morning and bow to them because I see that as a way of like paying respect to them and reminding myself of what they are. If it's a training day, at that point, I attempt to sneak out of the house and come to the gym without waking Naomi up. But Macy, who we've already heard from, quite often will wake up at like 3 or 4 a.m. and come and say hello to me, which is very cute. But then I have to like sneak her back into the bedroom before I go. So basically, if it's a training day, I'll come and train. Because the goal is whatever the hardest thing, the most cognitively demanding thing I have to do that day is, I will do it as early in my day as humanly possible. Especially if it's something I don't want to say not motivated to do, but struggle to get myself to do. Not that training is something I struggle to get myself to do, but definitely training in silence at 4 a.m. is something I struggle to get myself to do. And I think becoming a morning person was another part of that challenge, to prove to myself that like you are more moldable than you think. Like I used to be a night owl. I was just an owl because I had insomnia to like an insane degree, and then became a nighttime person and so on and so forth. But I've never been a morning person in my life until recently, and it was kind of like, why can you not be a morning person? Not that there's something superior about it, but just go do it then. It was another way of kind of proving to myself that I could. If it's a training day, I'll come and do that. If it's not a training day, I sit in front of my red light device. I use a grounding mat whilst to do that, and I journal, which is various things from gratitude to tasks for that day, a certain part of the Eightfold Path to focus on. I do a lot of word learning. I'm trying to learn like a lot of Japanese and Chinese terms. I think I'm up to like 70 something Chinese or Japanese words that I can now write down in order, from memory, and know the definition of every single one. I probably can't say a single one of them correctly, but I can write them at least. All the little hyphens and dashes really throw you for a loop there. I also play the Elevate games, the ones I have pretty much everyone doing. Play the 5 of those to basically get my brain working. And then if it's a non-training day, then I sit down and I do whatever the hardest thing is that I have to do that day, which for me personally is usually writing my book. Because that is the most cognitively demanding thing for me, which is why I say I don't feel like I'm a writer, because I can sit down and write a program and feel like I'm in this weird flow state, and that's wonderful, and time flies and productivity happens and it's wonderful. Whereas like for me, writing books is not. So that's the thing I put first. If it is a training day, I do all of that red light stuff when I come back from the gym. And then outside of that, there isn't a huge structure, to be honest, other than I go and do the Stoic journals every day, whereas before it was like the Dig Deeper journals. I usually use them as like a break in the day. Apologies, I forgot the meditation. I meditate AM and PM, usually pre-bed, and like I'll usually use my AM meditation as like a break from work. Like the sun has come up, I've been working for a couple of hours. I want to get away from the screen. So like if the sun is rising and it's all pretty outside, then that seems like a good reason as any to get out there and do it. So I'll meditate. Then during the day,
just that is outside. It's always outside,
no
matter the weather.
Yeah. The minus
1 degree here yesterday.
Yeah. I think I don't know what my PR is. Yes, I have a PR. Is in Fahrenheit, but in Celsius, I did it when we did the VIP event here. I was outside in the snow at like minus 25 or something like that, meditating. That was fun. The stiller you are, the more tolerable it is. It's very interesting. It's nowhere near as bad as it really sounds. And then like, PM, I have the meditation again. But outside of that, in terms of daily habits, I don't have anything else that's like really written in stone other than like trying to get to bed at a sensible time.
We go for a walk every day.
Yeah, but like, I suppose my day looks quite different to most because like I basically don't eat for most of the day. Like non-training days, I fast the entire day unless you count coffee until the evening. And then even right now on my training days, because I'm right at the end of a cut, like I'll have like 2 protein shakes and then I won't eat any solid food until like our evening meal together. I find that anyone who spent a lot of time meditating will get this, but like when you're full of anything, meditating feels different. It's more distracting. Whereas like, for example, I dry fast once a week. Like on the days that I dry fast and I don't even consume liquid, like my meditations on those days are the best by quite a distance. Because like there's nothing, your system isn't doing anything, if that makes sense. It's not processing anything, and it just feels very different. Like meditating like before food and after food, like before food for me, like when I've been fasting all day, is way more effective. And effective is a weird way of describing it, I know, but that would be that. I suppose in terms of other like quirky weird things that like we have EMF blocking devices near our bed. I've got one on under here now, and things like that, which again is more of the tinfoil hat stuff that doesn't help but definitely does help. Things like that I put in. But outside of that, I try to have as little rigidity in my schedule as I can, just because, I mean, we're very lucky that we have a career where I can have flexible hours, but it's more that I want to just be available to work on what needs doing, and that tends to change a lot day to day.
Cool. So I feel like we could probably wrap up with what are your long-term goals as a coach, an educator, and then with your training?
Coaching it, that's hard. Become some weird mix of like Louis Simmons, a Shaolin master, and like Jordan Peterson. I don't know. Like, I don't know how you describe the thing that I'm striving for, but it's whatever has the most maximal positive impact on the largest number of people within my wheelhouse, which, you know, happens to be strength training, right? But as we've kind of alluded to, strength training is a means to a greater end. So whatever molds me into the best possible influencer, I guess, with not in the social media style of the term though, in that regard is where I want to go. I have no idea what that's going to look like, because I had no idea what this looked like 2 or 3 years ago either. So I don't even want to predict there. And with my own training, again, dog chasing cars, but right now, I want to get back to doing dips with more than 100 kilos. I want to get my first 100 kilo push-up. I want to get my first like 150+% body weight chin up, which again, I've narrowly missed maybe now a few times. But outside that, my real goal is to work my way up that progression ladder of Li, Jin, Qi, Shen, and Kong, or Kong, Shen, sorry. And just see how far that rabbit hole goes and how well you can understand the weird little vessel that we have to manipulate, and hopefully help other people move better, train better, feel better, perform better in every single sense of the word. Because, you know, without sounding arrogant, like we've had some of the strongest people in the world come here for like training events and stuff, and some of the stuff that I have advised them on or shown them, they've come back and said like that was a game changer, like that was a big deal. And again, I don't say that to be arrogant, but it just makes me more confident that like that's the way I need to go, because if even people like that can benefit from it, then it must be the right thing to put my time and effort into. I would like to get to the point where I can basically cure any problem for people. Sure, that's like the type of stuff that I'm working on with Alex Kickle. Like, what is there that we can't fix is an interesting question, but for now, I will settle for just having a greater positive impact, for sure.
Wow, I love that. I feel like it's a good note to end on. Do you have anything to add?
No, I think we nailed it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Horrifying.
For listening. And yeah, we'll join us again soon.
Thank you.